Welcome back to the Yoga Chat. I'm your host, Montana.
I'm your host, May. I always feel so weird saying that.
I feel like it's gonna keep getting easier for me and it's just never gonna feel easy for you. You're just like, nope, that tastes weird.
I'm your
So
host, I guess.
yeah, she is. Not she doesn't guess. She knows. She knows she
I
is.
know.
Um, also, before we dive in, my mom is offended because we stopped saying hello to our moms in the beginning. And each week she's like, that was another great episode. Why'd you stop shouting me out? So, sup, Barb. I remembered
Hi,
this
Barb.
time. Hi, Barb.
Hi,
All
my
right.
mom, too, even though she still hasn't listened. My sister listens, though. So, hi to my sister.
Hi, Erin. We love you. All right. So I'm super excited. We're super excited about having this conversation because we've got the amazing Michelle. Look at me. I'm already not ready. Michelle Mallory. I knew that. And the amazing Amy Morse. And the reason that these two are, did I say your name right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay. The reason that these two special ladies are super exciting, why we're extra excited, is because if you listen to episode, I should have looked up the number, but with Hannah Reed, these are the teachers that Hannah spoke about and alluded to in her conversation. So both Amy and Michelle have been practicing for over 20 years. Amy grew up in South Mississippi, and they both live in the suburbs of Memphis. So Michelle's born and raised Memphis. And also, inside joke, if you don't understand this, go listen to Hannah's episode, but not Nashville, Memphis.
Absolutely.
And a fun fact, Amy, this is really funny. I love this. Um, if she retires, she wants to spend her time doing mundane chores like ironing, laundry, pressure washing, stuff like that, which is amazing. And Michelle actually grew, was it 1 inch taller after starting yoga?
I mean, technically a half inch,
Ah,
but when you are 5 feet tall, this is important.
yeah, those are both just amazing facts. And they also, for whatever reason, they kind of um track with the way that Hannah described you both. Amy's like, yeah, I want to do the laundry. And Michelle's like, I grew an inch taller.
Well, when you find out our signs, it's going to all make sense.
Yes.
Oh,
I
is
bet. I bet she grew an inch taller because she relaxed her fucking neck in a forward fold.
You hear that,
She let her
listeners?
spine lengthen, people. She let her spine lengthen. All right, I'm done.
That's it. That is
Well,
exactly it.
hi, Michelle. Hi, Amy. How are you guys today?
We're good. We're good. We've just
Fantastic.
been practicing, teaching, and what's fun about this, first of all, thank you all for putting this podcast together because, we used to tell our trainees when they were going through yoga teacher training, we would say, your spouses who don't practice yoga, they don't want to talk about yoga with you for an hour. Your friends that don't practice yoga, they don't want to talk about yoga with you for an hour either. But I'm thankful that you guys put this podcast together because now we get to talk about yoga for an hour, right?
Yes.
With people who practice and who love
Feel
it.
the same way.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
So, so true. All right. Well, since we kind of dipped our toes into it, what are your astrological signs? How about we start with you, Amy?
So I know my three. I am Virgo sun, Libra rising, Cancer moon.
Mm.
Wow. My husband is also a, a Virgo sun and a Cancer moon. Look at that.
So
Do you
we'll
like,
like we'll get along well.
yes, for sure. Do you have like a million projects that are
Always.
all halfway started?
Yes, absolutely.
Call that out. All right, cool. And Michelle, what about you?
Second that. Okay, first of all, I know my sun sign, but I had to go to the CoStar app to look up the other two because y'all,
Fair.
I did. Okay, I'm a Leo sun and I'm an Aries moon and I'm a Libra rising.
Oh, so you're both the same rising. Oh,
Inter
yeah, I love that. And you're Michelle, you're the third Leo sun we've had in a row. It's
I heard,
Pedro,
right? I
Nicole.
heard that.
Yes. So, well, so Nicole hasn't actually been aired yet. So you will be the third.
You just
But
gave up our big secret.
well, yeah, these two, yes. So get excited.
I
For
heard the
those
one.
of you that listen in order, you already heard Nicole. So
I heard the one with Pedro. Interesting. I mean, I'm right at the cusp. I'm Cancer Leo. I'm at the very beginning. So, you know, I like to say I have just enough maybe Cancer to not be a complete jerk, right? Like,
So you're crying and you're mad at the same time.
yes, I feel, but I also, yes, I can roar too. Yeah. So,
Balanced.
yeah.
Well, we're so excited because similar to Hannah, I keep saying that we're so excited, but we are similar to Hannah. We don't know Michelle or Amy at all, other than the amazing things that Hannah had to say about both of you. So I would love to just kick things off by both of you giving us a little background on who you are, where you come from, and what got you to this point where you're at in your lives right now. How about Michelle starts this time?
All right, I'll start this time. Let's see. You know, this is the yoga journey is such a good one. I have to go back a little ways to remember how I got started, but I'll just say this to preface. Like, I was not raised in an athletic family. Okay. I was not raised in a family where, you know, kind of physical pursuits were anything that were, you know, kind of stressed or reinforced. So I was that kid that took like a bunch of lessons and a bunch of different things, but never really got good at any one thing. You know what I mean? I took ballet for a little while. I took piano for a little while. I kind of just dabble in all of these things. And I think I ran cross country in high school, but I was like, I didn't understand that you had to run between the meets. Actually get really good at running. I just showed up for the meets and thought, I'll run. This sounds like fun. So yeah, I didn't really begin any kind of physical discipline. And I look at yoga as a discipline, a fun one, but that's what it is to me, until really post college. So I was in my 20s, and you know, Amy knows this, but I don't talk about this a lot, but in my early 20s, I was 23 years old. Um, I had a friend who was murdered here in Memphis. It was a She was killed by a member of a Vietnamese gang who wanted her car stereo because his girlfriend had the same one. And so that was a lot. And that was, you know, that was obviously life changing to lose a friend at such a young age. We were all in our early 20s, just like headed out into the world. And when that happened, you know, one of my best friends, Robin, and I decided, okay, look, we've got a couple choices here. We can either like binge drink ourselves into oblivion, or we can go try to do something positive with any of this in any way. And so we both decided we would do like a couch to 5K kind of program, right? So we were like non-athletes who, you know, decided we would go try to run a 5K. And we did. We joined a little YMCA and we started running next to each other on the treadmill and just like going through that whole painful process. And we ended up completing our 5K together. And I kept on running. And so I ran for about the next 7 or 8 years. I did like, you know, some 10Ks and then some half marathons. And then I did a marathon right before I turned 30. And so that kind of led me to understand like the power of putting a goal out there and meeting it. It was just really so linear and so, you know, beautiful. And that was really the first experience I'd ever had with that kind of stuff in my life. So because I was a runner, I was experiencing like the typical runner pains that happen, right? The low back, you know, was kind of a mess. My hamstrings were super tight, you know, all the kind of typical complaints you hear from runners as a yoga teacher. And so somebody said, you should try yoga. And I thought, well, okay, I'll do that. And I went and bought myself a little video from the Target, and it was called Yoga Sculpt with Karen Voigt. And I remember doing this video and thinking, damn, why is this so hard? Like, I thought yoga was just a bunch of stretching, right? Like people say who don't practice yoga. But I remember trying to hold just the plank poses, just a straight arm plank, and just like shaking uncontrollably. I had no upper body strength at all. And so, yeah, so I practiced with that on and off for a couple of years. And then right around the time I was pregnant with my first son, who's in college now, my husband actually bought me a little package of private lessons from someone who was getting her 200 hour probably and needed students, right? And so this person came to my house and taught me some privates. And yeah, and that's kind of how I got started. A few years later, I made it to studios and just kind of kept going from there. But yeah, to answer your earlier question, yeah, I was born and raised Memphis. My husband's from here. We've got 2 boys, a dog. My mom is also here. Hey, Margie, since we're shouting out our moms.
Hi,
And
Margie.
yeah, and so yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
That's an incredible story. I'm
It
so
is.
sorry that you had to go through something like that, but it's also so admirable and inspiring that at such a young age, you and your other friend were like, you know what, we're at a fork in the road and we have 2 options essentially. 'Cause, you know, that happens to most people at some point in their lives for whatever traumatic reason. And to make that choice and have it cultivate, you know, the rest of your life, it's like it could have really been a different choice and a whole different life. So what a
Yeah.
pivotal point. That's yeah, miraculous, truthfully. Whenever you started going, and then we'll jump into Amy, when you started going, I know we'll get into this down the road too, but when you first started going to the studio, what kind of studio, what genre of yoga was it?
So this was back in, I had to look up the year, like this was in 2005, okay? 4 or 5, and there just were not a lot of studios here. So I was going to a studio called Midtown Yoga. It was just kind of the classic old school, one of the very first studios in Memphis. And the cool thing about their studio and the way they had it set up, I went to a teacher named Shanti. Shanti was awesome. And I think her class was called alignment-based yoga. But the cool thing about her class was she taught it 3 times a week. And I think, especially in kind of the way that studios are run now, it's pretty rare to be able to come in and have the same teacher, at the same time slot, you know what I mean? More
Yeah.
than, once a week. So I had her 3 times a week. And so it was great. I just built this really solid foundation. I guess it was just like a hatha yoga class. We did the postures. She didn't physically assist, but she would just stand behind everybody, and she had eyes and could just nail it, you know what I mean, with verbal cues. So she'd
Mhm.
be like, Michelle, right shoulder, da 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 da, you know what I mean, and just kind of put you in those spots and the postures. And so yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and then a few years later, I discovered, power vinyasa or vinyasa flow. And I had a teacher that kind of introduced me to that kind of flowing practice. And I stayed with that for a number of years until, Ashtanga entered my life. And that's where we get to Amy, because my very first Ashtanga class was a class that Amy taught. So,
Oh, perfect.
You
It's like
come
we
full
planned that.
circle.
Yes.
right. Yeah.
So Amy, same thing. Will you just give us a little bit about your background and how you got to that point in your life when Michelle showed up to your class for the first time?
So I guess I would start by saying I was sort of a wannabe athlete. I never excelled at athletics, but I participated in athletics. Most, I think, for the community of being with the other kids. So, softball, basketball, track, that kind of thing. High school made the basketball team freshman year, was terrible. Never developed a jump shot. So I gave that up mid-year. I was like, I'm not going to excel at this. So bye. And just left, was on a dance line. And then my senior year did cheerleading just on a whim and made the squad. All the girls had been career cheerleaders, from the time they were young. So it was my first year. I was a senior in high school and I did it. Again, wasn't excellent, but I had a blast. And that's what it was about for me. It was just being with the girls and having a good time and, continuing to develop friendships. Went to college, did nothing, just studied, and so athletics wasn't really a part of my college life. I would try to go and work out, but I hated it. It was aerobics, it was machines. I wasn't into it. So maybe I didn't know what I was doing, but I just didn't enjoy it. And so then got into my work life, married life, motherhood, and had one son. And when he was 3, I gave birth to twin boys. So yeah, so they're 20 now and he's 23. And so my best friend from high school happened to live in Memphis. She had moved here as well and married a man from here. So We had reconnected, and when our firstborns were babies. And she came over to the house one day, and I had 3 under 3, and she just looked at me and she said, "You need yoga." And she and I had cheered together in high school, and we had played basketball in junior high. And so, we had a friendship, and I said, "Okay, let's go." So I got a babysitter and went to yoga with her. And I just remember there was no pressure. The teacher made it just an acceptable space for me to be in my postnatal body. And it was a vinyasa class. I don't really recall that there was any, fantastic playlists or anything, or if there was even music. But I remember at the end, we laid in Shavasana. The lady came around and gave us little massages and put lavender cloths over our eyes. And I was so tired. And so I thought, it's like, is this nap time? Like, this is the best thing ever. So I fell in love with it, but I really couldn't get a babysitter, 5 times a week so that I could go and do yoga. So like Michelle in the land of VHS, I went and got Rodney Yee's AM PM yoga, and I did it at home by myself for a long time. And then we moved into the suburbs from Memphis, and I joined a little club where I now teach, and found my first real yoga teacher, and it was Vinyasa Flow. And again, she just was such a lovely human. And the class felt good in my body. I was able to do things that I never thought athletically I could do. And just started developing a practice and just loved it. But I always wanted to, when I would practice at home, because I still would only go to her, 2 or 3 times a week, I would try to emulate that at home. I would try to write flows. I was trying to, reproduce what I had experienced in practice with her. So that kind of made me think I needed to teach. So, yeah.
I used
I
to do
love
the
the
same
visual of
thing.
your friend coming to your house and just looking around and being like, "You need yoga."
Well, I told her, I said, I don't want to work out. Like, I don't like working out. So I don't want to do this. And she was like, you'll love it. So she and I actually did teacher training together. So
So
That's
what do you
funny.
think, what do you think about yoga? If you could pinpoint it, what what about yoga was different than all the other fitness things that you tried to do that made you be like, oh, this is different.
The
I think
one.
I enjoy this. Yeah, this is the one.
I got to let go the need to be perfect, right? That
Yeah.
perfectionism that we're known for. As Virgos, I didn't have to be perfect. I could just be vulnerable. I could be sucky. Nobody was watching me, and I could just be in my breath and in my body for that day. And the next day it was totally different, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
That teacher changed your life because you
Yeah.
could have gone to a class that was completely different than that and not felt that way. And you may have not wanted to go back. But that's why it's so important, as teachers, and I'm sure it means a lot to you now, to hold space for people in such a way where they can come and they can be themselves and they can fall down and they can be messy and they never once feel like they're being judged or they're not good enough or they don't belong there. And that's just so important. We talk about that all the time. It doesn't matter the flow, it doesn't matter the music, it doesn't matter. The fancy stuff doesn't matter. If people come there and feel welcome and feel safe and feel like they can be themselves, it's like that's the space that's what you're trying to do as a yoga teacher. You don't need to have anything other than just that. So I love that you said that because I was just thinking about that earlier today.
Yeah. If you did your first teacher training, if I'm understanding correctly, that was a vinyasa teacher training. No, it wasn't. Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit more
We need,
about
we
that?
need a
So
story.
I,
This is a
so
good
I
story.
started practicing yoga in 2004, and I did my first 200 in 2011. And this teacher who I had been practicing with came to me in 2010 and said, "You need to teach." And I said, "I can't do chaturanga. I don't have any business teaching this." And she said, "That's not what it's about. I can see something in you. You love this. It's changing you, and you need to give this to other people." And I couldn't afford it at the time. It was such an expensive training. And I didn't know anything about other schools, or, there wasn't, a lot of information on the web per se at that point that I was diving into. And so I waited a year, and I talked to my husband about it, and ever supportive. Michele and I both have ridiculously supportive husbands. The next year she came back to me. She said, I'm doing it again. Do you want to do this? And I said, I do. And so I signed up, and it was in another student's house. There were 12 of us. And I walked in the first day thinking, she had said it was Ashtanga Vinyasa, but I didn't know what Ashtanga was other than the 8 limbs. So I thought I was going to learn how to teach power flow.
Mhm.
And so I walk in the first day, and she's there, and the other 11 people are there, including my best friend from high school, April. Hello, April. And there's a man standing there in a skirt, and it's Greg Tebb, who's my teacher. And so he said Ekam, and I thought Urdhva Hastasanam was Ekam pose. I didn't know. And at the end of the first night, it was a 9-month training. We learned how to teach full primary series. And I fell in love. My body transformed in those 9 months from my post-pregnancy body into what I have maintained for since 2011. I have not had a lot of weight fluctuations. It's been, moderation in all things. It's amazing how this practice, you start to put aside things that aren't good for you without effort. It just organically happens, right? And so, just people say, well, you're a yogi. Do you do this? Do you do that? Yeah, I drink alcohol, but I don't really feel the need to overdrink. And my body tells me when it's not good for me. And so, a lot of that moderation just really happens naturally through this practice if you're doing it regularly. So I did that training, started teaching. I started training in August of 11, started teaching in December of 11. So, I mean, I wasn't even certed yet, and I started teaching Ashtanga. I just fell in love with it. And then I started teaching at Lifetime Fitness, kids yoga, $7 an hour. And it was fun. And then they moved me upstairs to the grown-up classes once I was certed, and started teaching power flow. I didn't even know what I was teaching. A teacher asked me to sub. She sent me a flow, and I went in and taught it. I've always loved music. Michele and I have that in common. We really love music. It's just a part of who we are in our souls. And so playlists have come very easy to the both of us. Theming comes very easy to the both of us. And so I taught at Lifetime Fitness, had the opportunity to go and study with Johnny Kest, did a second 200 with him, specifically in Vinyasa Flow, slow burn, all of those formatted classes there. And then became the facilitator of their teacher training school at the Lifetime here. So started doing teacher trainings in 2014. Yeah. So.
That's amazing. I have so many thoughts.
Me too. All right, you go first, Montana.
Well, first of all, what you said about when you start diving into this practice, things that you don't need anymore just organically start to drift away. And it's I got
feel
full
that
body
so
chills.
much.
Full
Same.
body chills. And I love how practical and honest and human you are. May and I are very similar in that sense too. It's like you can have this be your entire life, like the four of us have or are, and still be a human, and still enjoy the pleasures of drinking wine or eating meat. I don't know if you guys eat meat, and if you don't want to eat meat, great, but like really honoring whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is that aligns with what feels good in your body, right? And there's, like you said, moderation or balance. One of my friends recently said she used the word rhythm in terms of like her health and wellness, and I loved that. She's a dancer, so it made sense for her. She's like the rhythm of my health and wellness. So yeah, it's just, I love that. I also, it's so clear your passion, like it just oozes from your pores, just even from a computer screen. I think that it's also fascinating that you went from 2004 to 2011 thinking like, I don't know, I love this practice, but I have no business teaching it. And then head first, like 2011 to 2014, now you're facilitating training. So it's incredible. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm just, what a cool story. When was it that Michele came to your teacher training?
No, she didn't come to my teacher training.
Oh, yes,
Michele had
class.
her own. Michelle had her own fantastic teaching career
Yes.
at another studio in town. And so I was teaching all the yoga I could possibly teach in a week. And Michelle had one studio that she was super, super plugged into and was building classes. And she was like she was one of the very first teachers at this studio when it opened in East Memphis, and really developed a very strong group of yogis. And I'll let her tell her part of that story, but I was teaching Ashtanga full primary, Ashtanga short form. I was teaching flow. I was teaching hot vinyasas and yins and slow burns and all of the things at Lifetime. And I was also teaching at the studio that she was at. I knew of her. I had heard her name in the teaching circles. I'd never attended one of her classes. I knew she was a powerhouse and that everyone loved her. She had a very strong, group of students. And we were both teaching at another studio that was in Midtown Memphis. And we were both teaching there, and she walked into the class and took my Ashtanga class. And weirdly, she and I had both been to a training of a very notable Ashtanga teacher, global Ashtanga teacher in Little Rock. And I didn't know she was there until I looked back at the photographs, and there's Michelle. So it's really cool. Just the universe just really conspired to bring us two together. And I'm eternally grateful. She's one of my dearest soulmates now. But she walked into the class and did the class, and I think she really loved it. But Michelle has always been a studier of multiple disciplines. And so she didn't really jump on board the Ashtanga train until a little later, but she had a love for the practice, I think, from that very first one. And then she and I co-taught, we were on a text thread, and the owner of the studio in Midtown said, does anybody want to teach a class at Shelby Farms, which is our giant park here? And she and I were the first two that said yes. And he said, well, you both have said yes. Can you co-teach it? I'd never really met her. So we talked on the phone once. She did the playlist. We got up. I was like, I'm going to start it. You're going to come in. I'll wrap it up. And we got out there and did this class on Earth Day. What year was that, Michelle? Do you remember? Was it?
Okay, so we're coming up on 8 years. So this Earth Day will be 8 years.
Okay.
So 2016.
2016.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, 16. So we coached off a class, and we had numerous students that really enjoyed it. And then we had a couple that were like, they're a really powerful duo. Like, I really like their energy and their chemistry. Do you offer teacher training? Can they do teacher trainings? And I had done 4 with Lifetime, 1 with another company by myself. And you two know you have a school. I mean, it is so difficult to show up and be present for 20-hour weekends. And I was doing 2 to 3 trainings a year. It was so hard to be alone doing that. And so I told Michelle, I was like, I've been thinking about this curriculum because I'm a studier and I've been studying and compiling just information of my own. Would you be willing to do this with me? And she said, yes. And so we started a school through Yoga Alliance, and we have a 200 track and a 300 track. And so we started doing teacher trainings in 2017. So
It's amazing. I can't imagine doing teacher trainings without May. I couldn't.
right.
Yeah, no. There's like that emotional support level of and every group is different, and like some groups vibe and it's this magical thing, and some groups, it's a little tougher, and having someone to like kind of lean on at the end of the day, enduring is really nice. I have a million questions. So first of all, you guys, happy almost 8-year friend
Yeah.
anniversary. Is Earth Day your actual friend anniversary?
I mean,
I
I don't
guess
know.
so.
Earth Day is Earth Day is where we first co-taught that class, and like kind of,
Okay.
I mean, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, my version of going to Amy's Ashtanga class for the first time, I'm not going to say it was love. Okay. I'm not going to say love. That's a strong word, Morse.
Brutal honesty.
Yeah, but
Let's
no,
go.
I went to this class, and the pose. The pose that gets everybody in Ashtanga is Uttita Hasta, Parangushtasana, the one where you're standing up and you're holding your big toe, and then there's that moment where you go out to the side, you come forward again. You have to let go of your big toe and hold your leg out there and have both hands on your waist. And one of the funny things about that class was Amy had us set up like Mysore style, like traditional style, where the students are in 2 rows facing each other. And the girl that was just opposite me, we figured out that if we just scooted a little bit further forward towards each other, that we could actually just put our feet together and like hold each other up in that last D version of that posture. And no, what grabbed me about the practice was that, by that point I had been practicing power vinyasa in a hot room, right, for 4 years, something like that. And I was like, what the heck? Why is this so hard? It was just so difficult in a different way. And I think that that's who ends up becoming drawn to a practice like Ashtanga. It's the people that go, damn, this is hard. I want to figure it out. There's something here, right? And so that's kind of how that went with me. But yeah, the studio where I had been teaching, they had a teacher training, but they kind of had their facilitators plugged in already, so I was starting to, I was teaching a lot of public classes. I was teaching more and more privates, and I was starting to teach workshops and just kind of develop these things because I was like, I've got more. There's more. I want to give more than I can deliver in just a 1 hour, power flow class where, you have to keep people on track. You have to give them the practice, right? And so that's kind of, when Amy entered the conversation, when we met, we figured out, wait, are we going to do a teacher training together? Are we doing a teacher training for the studio? What is it? And it took us a few weeks of kind of sorting and figuring out that no, actually, if we're going to create a teacher training, this is going to be our training. And so then that's what led to, we figured out we had to develop an LLC and, and go through Yoga Alliance and like go through all those steps to make the structure of it happen. And so that's kind of what we did from there.
That's definitely a
Do you
goal of
guys-
mine in the future, to write my own, which just feels so daunting because what May and I facilitate is the Yoga 6 200-hour, which is a great place to start. But yeah, Michelle or Amy, sorry, did you create your own 300 or 200, excuse me, that you were facilitating alone
No,
before?
it was,
Okay, that was
no,
okay.
it was Johnny Kest's program.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so I
yes,
was
you said
teaching
that.
that material, and every training is so different, but I was so passionate about Ashtanga. It's difficult when you're doing a training for a large company because you don't have a lot of autonomy.
hmm
And so I felt that. And so when I met Michele, she was such a powerful flow teacher. I'm admirable, but she was phenomenal. And so, we started, it was so weird how things happen, like the public class. And then it's like, do you want to do this school with me? Yes, let's do that. We've got curriculum. We've got a ton of information together. Let's pull it together. So you've already got that built in with May. I mean, like y'all have already got it. And so, I would just say, start kind of pulling from each other what you're passionate about. We just wrote things down. It's like, what do you excel at? What do I excel at? What is our mission and vision? I think that was huge for us to establish that, because we've never argued in 8 years. We've
I was
disagreed.
going to ask you guys, have you ever bickered? Because me and Montana keep saying, like, when are we going to fight? When are we going to fight? Because it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened because, we keep our eyes set on the goal.
Yeah.
When we started and why we do this. And so if there's a question of, do we take that opportunity and one of us isn't sure, we go back to that, say, does this align with that mission and vision that we set up on day one? And if the answer is yes, then the other person walks into that unknown. And if it's a no, then we go somewhere else. But really and truly, everything has happened for us very organically. So even the name of the business, it's Dvipada Yoga. And Dvipada means 2 feet or 2 pillars. And so when we opened a studio, we called it 2 pillars because it was more accessible to those that didn't know, Sanskrit. So, everything has been very organic. And to this day, if we have an opportunity, but we start hitting a bunch of hurdles or roadblocks, we just go, no attachment. If it's going to circle back, it circles back. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
What a great motto for life in general.
I was going to say, we have a lot to learn. You guys are a good valuable like
Yeah,
lesson
but
to us both to hear
yeah,
what you
but
both have to say.
you're partnered with a yogi, right? And that's, I think that's what makes a huge difference too, is because you're in this work of self-study. And you've probably told your 200s. I mean, we used to tell our trainees and we still tell our students, like, we have a book club going on right now where we're studying the sutras again. We had a book club going on last month where we were studying, a book based on the Bhagavad Gita again. And you keep going back into this philosophical work to make yourself better and to try to pull out what's best about you. And when you're partnered with somebody who also understands that, like, I'll tell Amy things, she'll tell me things that maybe if we were different people in a different circumstance, we would look at as like a criticism, or it would might turn into a fight, but it doesn't, because we're like, okay, what did you think when this opportunity came up? We just talk everything through, and we're just real honest. And there's no, I don't know. There's just,
Ego.
yeah, it's just, like she said, if things start to feel like we're pushing up against a rock, and, then we're like, hey, let's just, we're dropping that for a while. It's starting to become, laborious, and, maybe we'll go over here instead. So.
Yeah, if it's clearly not working, it's clearly not working, right? Like why? And that's the yoga practice off the mat. Why try to force this if we're, running up against a rock? So how many years have you guys, or how many trainings have you facilitated at this point together? You're like, I don't know.
We've done, well,
8?
we don't run trainings directly out of our school anymore. We have a couple of other options, but a studio that we both teach at, they have a 200 and 300 hour training. And so they've asked us to come in and be on their facilitation team. And so we have brought our curriculum to that school instead. And those two individuals that own that studio are just so dear to us. And it's one of those things where in the yoga world, you can see other yoga teachers as your competition, or you can understand that every teacher that's out there doing this work has a place and a purpose, and you're not going to be every student's answer.
Mhm.
And so we have tried our very best in this small yoga community in Memphis in the Mid-South to support other teachers, and to support studios and support schools. So they had a studio, we had a studio. They had a school, we had a school. And if a student came to us and our timing didn't fit, we trusted those two owners enough to say, go do their training. And they did the same with us. So there was this mutual regard for one another, and it was never competition. And so then when we started sort of changing who we were organically, this studio stepped in and said, you got a place anytime. And it's just been this beautiful, reciprocal, loving, respectful, admirable place for us to be. And we're very happy. And then our other thing is that we do apprenticeships. So that's our big thing now, is focusing on that one-on-one, that individual yoga student or teacher, and really pulling out what they need. We are two pillars. Michele is, the anatomy queen, and she is in and immersing herself in that all the time. And for me, I'm more of the philosophical history, Sanskrit person, and I'm immersing myself in that all the time. And then we cross-reference one another.
Mhm.
So I'll study some anatomy, and she'll study some Sanskrit. But we both kind of look to each other to be sort of the person in the know, because we're in that work all the time.
Yeah.
So the students get the best of us because they get us both. And we've had opportunities to do things separately, y'all. And we just have, you two are in the same situation that we were. And you're going to get your individual opportunities. We get individual opportunities all the time. I'm like, I don't want to do it without you. She's like, me neither, so we like to be together.
That was Amy's first question to me when so we operated 2 studios. I don't know if y'all knew that, but gosh, when did now we've got to go another segue. But yeah, I think that was in 2017, right? Amy had a friend from back home, from South Mississippi, who is just like a, fitness leader in North Mississippi now. And he bought a building. Oh my gosh, this is such a long story, but long story short, he bought a building. There was a room vacant in this building that he didn't know what he was going to do with. He had, y'all, this is how the universe works in yoga. You know this. He had literally walked out of the closing, had just signed the papers to buy this building, and Amy called him and was like, "You've been on my mind lately. What are you doing?" And he was like, "Amy Morse, I have just bought a building. I want to offer yoga. Will you come teach yoga at this empty, room in my building?" And so she called me and she was like, "Is this an Amy Morse venture? Or is this a Dweepada venture?" And I'm like, "I'm in, I'll drive 40 minutes, one way to go teach a class." And that's what we did for 2 years. We operated in a town called South Haven, Mississippi, and we, built students there from the ground up who had never practiced yoga, period, let alone, Ashtanga yoga. And so we did that for about 2 years. And then we realized, hey, we do need to be closer to home. We do need to be in our community where we live, closer to where we are. And so an opportunity came up 5 minutes from my house to open a small studio there, which we did in May of 2019.
Ooh,
And
timing.
yeah,
You
you
had
can probably
Dweepada.
figure out where that was headed, right? So
Yeah.
we were just getting going. We had this beautiful Ashtanga program and workshops we were hosting there, and it was just a great space. And then, yeah, March of 2020 happened, and I remember our little Instagram post that we put out that was like, "Yeah, we're gonna be closed for 2 weeks," all that. All that. But and then we closed, we just closed that studio. We fought it for about a year, trying to figure out what are we doing? We're teaching everything on Zoom. Why are we paying rent on a vacant space? We're teaching on Zoom, And so at that time when we decided to close, the studio owners that Amy just mentioned earlier, we called those ladies and we said, "Ladies, we need to go have a dinner. We need to go spend some time with you." We sat down at the table with them and Amy's like, "You tell them." I'm like, you tell them. So we go back and forth. I finally took a huge sip of wine and I just said, "Ladies, we're closing our studio. We're done." To which their comment was, "Have you seen the new studio that we're moving into and the big space that's vacant in the back of that studio? Like, why don't you just come teach Ashtanga there?" And we
Oh
were
my
like, "Oh
gosh.
my God." So that's how that has happened. Things have just been like, here, have this. And then why don't you take this too? So that's what I mean by, and what Amy was saying about um, not feeling resistance. Like when you're in
Yeah.
that spot where you're supposed to be teaching, it's like this little pull, from the other side that's like, "Let me put you here." So
Mhm.
that's kind of been the story.
So you guys have just aligned so much with your beliefs that things have been coming to you organically because you're making the right choices and you're following what's going on
I
in
don't
your
know.
hearts and your heads.
I
That
mean,
seems to be something that Montana and I have been talking about a lot. Like we talk about things, we have conversations about things, and then sometimes things happen that indicate that we're moving towards those things, and it's just like how, and it's just kind of like not something I've ever experienced in my life because up until 2018 I was working a full-time corporate job and I got a choice to take a payout and leave or stay and hate my life. So I left and went through yoga teacher training. And then since then, I can't even describe how much my life has changed and how things that I never in a million years could have ever cooked up in my own brain that would be happening to me have happened. And it's funny too, because like when I first talked to Montana on the phone, when I knew this yoga studio was opening down the street from my house, and the day I found out, I had been thinking about yoga teacher training for years. I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I called my mom and she's like, you should do it. And she's one of those people that will talk you out of anything if she thinks it's wrong. And I was fully expecting her to tell me I was fucking insane. But she was like, nope, you should do it. In fact, I'm sending you $300 because I want you to sign up today. And I was like, okay, mommy. And so like she's still helping me out as a grown up. And I signed up like literally the day I found out that yoga studio was opening. And a year later, I'm getting interviewed on the phone by Montana. And as we're talking, I'm like, I really just like her. I just like have a feeling about her. Like I don't know, something's going on. And we talk about this a lot, but I'm actually getting emotional. But Montana, I'm very grateful for you.
I'm grateful
I'm
for
gonna
you
stop
too,
now.
May. It's so
Oh,
But
cool
yes.
to
I'll take
connect with you, Michelle, and you, Amy, because I don't know why wasn't anticipating it, but I didn't have any expectations. But you guys really are like just a beautiful example of what May, because May and I are just now getting started with this, with all this stuff, especially like together. And so you're a beautiful example of like what could be. And it really is anything that's meant to be. And I also want to say too, like you guys both give me so much hope, in the sense that I come from a competitive dance background. I did it for 20 years. It was great. It was amazing. But like when I left that world and came to yoga, one of the most amazing parts of it was just such a relief that as a student, I felt no competition. I actually had to learn that. In the beginning, I was like performing on my mat, but I eventually learned like, oh, this is the opposite of that. And that's what I think kept me going. And I think that's what's gonna help the longevity of this being in my life for much longer than dance ever could have been. And when I did my first 200 hour, I noticed, and this isn't to say, any sort of negative judgment on anybody, but once I started like dipping my toes into the other side of the experience as a teacher, I started noticing those like vibes that I got in the dance world of like what you guys said, like yoga teachers thinking that they need to compete against each other. And it always gave me a weird taste in my mouth. When I was a dancer, you ask anyone that knew me growing up, I was the most competitive. Like I have the most competitive spirit, but I never understood it coming from yoga teachers or yoga studios. And when I first met the owners of the studio that May and I teach together at, I got that same exactly what May just said she felt for me on the phone. That's what I felt from them in our interview. I was like, these people are like it's not just lip service. Like they're not trying to make the best yoga studio. They're trying to create their version of a yoga studio. And whoever it works for, great. And whoever it doesn't work for, they openly since day one have been like, okay, go to this place or go to this place. You don't want music, try this place. You don't want heat, try this place. um you know all of the above. And so to hear, you guys all the way down in Memphis, Tennessee, that you're really cultivating a space and a community that is similar to, our mission and our goal, which is just to get more people doing yoga. And anyone that's interested in doing teacher training, to find the right one, right? Whether that's timing or teachers or style or whatever. And so it's just so refreshing to hear that from you guys. Last thing that I'll say too, I was just listening to a podcast, Aubrey Marcus. I love his podcast. He's out there. And I sent this to May actually. He just recently interviewed Rick Rubin. And did I
Just
say
read
that
it.
right?
I just read, yeah,
Did
I
you?
just finished that book.
Oh, it's so good. The Creative Act.
Yes.
You are now the fifth person in 1 week that has mentioned that book. I just said this morning at the yoga studio to the girl working the back or the front desk, I was like, the universe is slapping this book in my face. And then you just said it again. So
I mean,
after we're done, I'm
I took
buying it.
10 pages of notes from that book, just quote after quote after quote that spoke to me. And usually I can discern like little nuggets. It was like nugget after nugget after nugget after nugget. It was
The
amazing.
whole book. Yeah.
Yeah.
What he said on the podcast, which I'm sure he talks about in the book, is the same thing in terms of artists. He's like, artists never, like true artists never bash other artists. They understand that what they're expressing via their art through their art is uniquely theirs. And so it can't be a competition. It gets like, weird and competitive when you put different labels on it and you put it in the 3D world and blah, 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 blah. But like true art has no competition. So it's funny that I listened to that this morning and now we're talking about it here because I think it's so true and it's so important. We're all so unique and we all have unique gifts to share. And as long as we're aware of what those are and we're honing those gifts in, then the next person, the person next to us can only help support us and bring us up, just like we're going to help support them and guide them higher as well. So
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just,
it's one of the things that we say in our teacher trainings. We get to the business section and talk to them about this. I mean, we would say, if you can open a studio right next door to ours and do it better than us and be more successful, do it. First
Mhm.
off, more yoga for more people. And secondly, we've got to stay sharp, right? You have to keep in the work and stay sharp. And I've had a trainee that owns a school now and a studio, and it's like, yes, you want to see them be better than you, or to rise to their potential.
Yeah.
That's the point. That's the point.
Rise
Yeah,
to the
well,
potential.
that just comes, I mean, you have to have that mindset if you're training teachers. If you're training teachers, you can't say, I'm going to give you all these tools, but don't, you can only go this far. You know what I mean? You can't do that. So if you're going to give the tools, and if you're going to put the knowledge out there with a group, then yeah, you have to be able to, pull in the ego and pull in any sort of jealousy that can creep up. And it does, you see somebody doing something that maybe you wanted, and you're like, oh, did it. Okay. Well, okay. You have to, sit in that and understand that that was for them. That was not for you. Something else is for you. And it's not going to slip you by. It's not going to, it's not going to remain undone. If you're in the work, it's going to get done through you, what's supposed to happen. So.
Yeah. My greatest teachers have always said to me, every single one of them in their own way, I've taught you everything that I can. Your next step, your next job is to find your next teacher. And I hope that I can do the same thing for anyone that considers me to be their teacher, because yeah, we have everything that we have. And then it gets to a certain point, it's like, next level, baby, try someone new. Or next step. I shouldn't say level. It's, doesn't have to be, it can be linear.
I've been at studios like that where they empower you just enough, and then once they see you doing well, they almost pull back. And it's noticeable. It's like a feeling that you can grab it in the air, and it's just kind of, that is why. And the thing is, those studios and those people haven't grown in the way that they should have, and and I believe it's because they have that mindset of, they're only empowering you to a degree where they're not threatened, and then they stop. But whereas the studios and the people and the artists that become successful are so grounded in what they have to offer, that they're not overly threatened or concerned by someone else rising alongside of them. And I think that's a good way to look at it. Is, you seem, Michelle, what you just said is just, what's for you is for you. And as long as you stay in those places that are for you, and those things are going to keep coming to you, and what someone else might be doing or having is not, it's not going to take away from what's meant to be yours. And I think that that's a really beautiful way to look at life in general, beyond yoga, beyond anything else. But it is hard. Like you said, you're human. Those feelings creep up. But that's something that I'm going to take away from this conversation today, is just, what is for me will be for me. And whatever is for someone else is going to be for them. And so far, I feel a-okay with what's coming towards me.
It's pretty good when you let it just flow, huh? I have
Yeah,
a
it does.
question for you guys. If you could give, like, if you were just talking to someone who is just right on the cusp of wanting to do teacher training, but they were hesitant for whatever reason, how would you encourage them to take that leap of faith?
Well, I mean, I think first off, I mean, I've done 13 or 14, 15 teacher trainings between 200 and 300s. And, there is that point where the student has to decide if it's for them. So what I usually say is, number one, if you're considering a teacher training, it doesn't matter if it's mine or someone else's, go to the facilitators classes, because you can feel a lot of the energy in the facilitator, in how they teach asana. So, that would be the first thing, is come to my class or go to that school's teacher's class, because, it's like a buyer beware situation, right? Like, what happens when you walk into that teacher training and you've never had that teacher before? I mean, the teacher training I did, the very first one, she was my teacher. So I knew what her energy was, and I had a lot of trust in her. So I feel like if you're going to step into the energetic exchange of a teacher training, there's a lot of time and money. And as you know, there's a lot of vulnerability and self-study that comes through these. So you've got to be in that space where you can trust your facilitators. And if you don't, the experience is not going to be pleasant. But if you do, so that's my first thing. Come take a class with a facilitator, and the second thing is, like, let go. just let go and try it. Just go in there, get in
Amen.
there and do it.
Yeah, and I would just say, I, well, I would just say it's never too late, I mean, um, and if it's something that's pulling at you, if it's something that you feel led to, yeah, do some investigation, but like get in there. It's the same with people wanting to come to yoga. You
Mhm.
have those friends, we all have those friends that are like, I really need to try yoga, and they just stay on the outskirts, and there's just such goodness if you just step over that line. But I would just say, yeah, it's like it's never too late. You're going to help the audience that you're intended to help. I went through my 200-hour yoga teacher training at 42. I'm so glad I did.
Mhm.
I'm so glad I did. I've got over a decade now of helping people, get stronger. And, I mean, I'm sorry, but at a certain age, women who, I'm now in my early 50s, and I just think women in particular start to become a little bit invisible to a lot of society. And so it's like, yeah, if you're this age, if you're, exploring going into a teacher training, yeah, do it. And then empower some people to, understand what they can pull from themselves. I mean, we have students now who are all ages. I mean, we teach people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But y'all, I mean, I am super impressed by our, students that are in their 50s and 60s, and they're working their butts off getting things. I mean, these people are doing Bakasana, they're doing Pichamarasana, they're doing headstands, they're doing, I mean, I learned how to stand up out of a back bend at age 50, so like go for the things. Like if you feel like there's something that you want to do physically, go for it. If there's a place that you feel like yoga can put you mentally, yeah, go for it. Like bring it all in. So I would just say if you're thinking about it, get in there and find a way to teach. And, it doesn't even have to be a full-on teacher training. Honestly,
Mhm.
find a friend to teach, find a friend to share yoga with.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that the soul is always that willing participant on this journey, and the body, to a certain extent, is on that journey as well. The only obstacle is what's between our ears.
Amen.
That is what we call the juice. And we do
juice.
this even though it looks like fresh cracked pepper, but we're actually squeezing juice here.
Because if we did this, it would look like
Now you look like you're milking a cow. I
cows.
don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's sign
Yeah.
language for milk.
Milk. Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
This
So
is the
no,
juice.
not
This is the
this.
juice.
We need to figure out the sign language for juice and start doing that. Just another thing before we get to our last question. I just spoke with one of our students at our studio. I don't want to say his age, but he looks great. So he looks younger than he is, but he's definitely older. He's older. And he just said that he and his wife went to Costa Rica and Panama, and they were there for about 2 weeks. And he got to go on all these hikes and see all these beautiful things and do all this sightseeing. And he said, I just have to let you know that it's because of this place and this practice that I was able to do that. He was like, I looked at 99% of the other people my age, and they were just sitting on the boat drinking. And I thought to myself, no judgment. I'm definitely going to go on the boat later and drink, but I could do that at a bar anywhere. Why am I in Costa Rica and Panama if I'm not going to be able to see the sights? And it was really sad. He said, because I'm sure that, if they could, they would. And he's in there like, and I don't want him to sound like this frail old man, because he is a rock star. I mean, he's back there. He makes me look weak. So that's why I'm like, I don't know his age. He's up there, but he looks great and he's so strong. And it was so cool to be able to hear, like, how the practice is benefiting his life outside of the space, even at his age, especially at his age. And yeah, and how he feels comfortable enough to share that with me too. So it's really special. Well, our last question, because we're almost at an hour. You guys have listened, so do you think yoga can change the world? Yes or no, and why? They're both pointing at each other. You?
Okay. I think yoga changes your inner world. And I think that has to happen, on a case by case basis to change the world. So yes, I do. I think that yoga is changing the world and can change the world for people who choose to embrace the mindset of it and the possibilities of it, of understanding that when you meet yoga, and if you're listening to this and you've never been to a yoga class, like, come on, like when you meet yoga, um, you're shown another way of thinking about the world and life, and you're shown another way of processing what is going on around you and how much you choose to engage with out there that is positive, negative, or otherwise. So I feel like yoga is changing the world. It has been changing the world. There are, a couple of millennia deep of people who have been doing this practice in some form or another up until modern day. And I feel like, we are currently actively making the world a better place, but it has to start with your mindset and your outlook on things first.
So true. I love it. Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is that yoga has already changed the world.
Mhm.
And I agree with Michelle. It's an individual journey. I think everybody is a yogi, but again, it's about the gray matter between our ears that sets up these limitations and tells us stories that, what you hear most often as a yoga teacher is, well, I won't try yoga because, the big question I always get is, am I doing it right? And I always say, where are you feeling it? Because that tells you if you're doing it right. It's not about what it looks like, but I think people, they get in their head. And so all of us are yogis, but because of our mind stuff, it keeps us from the daily work of changing the world. So yes, it can change the world, but it takes effort. And, it's like, what is it? Sutra 114. It's like to become firm in this journey, you have to do it for a long time without interruption and with dedication and letting go of the fruits of it. But yes, it can. Michelle, what's your favorite sutra? The one that we put on that shirt that we did, is it 246?
Well, I think I have it right here. It's 133.
Her favorite sutra is beautiful.
It's 133. And
133.
yeah, the reason, let me find it so I don't.
To me, it's about like connection with everyone. And it's about how to handle human interaction on a case by case basis.
By cultivating attitudes of friendliness towards the happy, compassion towards the suffering, delight towards the virtuous, and equanimity towards the evil. Thoughts become purified and the obstacles to self-knowledge are lessened. And it's how we look at ourself and our world and other people. But the problem is I think the word wicked, equanimity toward wicked. We don't have equanimity toward wicked. We have obsession with wicked. And that's a problem in the world these days. But, if you can approach people with compassion and grace and understanding of where they are, that's another way that yoga changes the world.
It's all connection. Thank you for connecting with us, y'all. This was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's so special.
I admire you both so much, and I'm so grateful that you were able to come on here because I could talk for another hour, maybe two, and maybe I'll reach out because I feel like you guys are you're where I
So
would love to
wise.
be at some point someday. And I think you're both bringing all of these beautiful things to your area, and those people are spilling it out into other areas. And I think the name of this one, we should call them the Godmothers of Yoga in Memphis,
Yes.
because they're just fucking lighting that town up with this yoga goodness. And I'm really
The
excited we
Memphis
got to
Yoga
talk to you.
Godmothers.
Mhm.
Yes.
All come down here. I mean, anytime you want. Like, we've got a super quirky, fun, vibey city. Like, and the yoga is just like that too. Like, there's not a lot of ego here. There's just not. It's, our basketball team, Memphis Grizzlies, right, or Grit and Grind. And so Grit and Grind is kind of the name of the game down here. Everybody's just in some good, honest work. So thank you all so much
Yeah.
for having us.
Thank
And
you. And thanks to
Really.
Hannah for connecting us as well. And thanks to Graham, because Graham's really the glue where this all started. So, and thank you, May, because if you didn't go to Pitt with Graham, then we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Binge drink with them in my 20s.
In
How would we have
basements.
ever known?
Y'all are doing
Uh,
great work. Thank you and keep it up. If
Thank
y'all need
you.
anything, let us know.
Means a lot.
We
We
will.
will. And I hope that I'm manifesting and we will eventually meet in real life and get to take your amazing classes in the flesh. That would be just epic. So,
It would.
all right, y'all. Well, thank you so much. Have an awesome week and we will chat with you next time.
Oh, I didn't say
Yes.
hello to my mom. Hi, Mom.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And also, can you
Also,
tell us where
yeah.
to find you on Instagram?
Exactly.
Oh yeah. So our business Instagram is DWIPADA yoga, Dvipada yoga. And then I'm Yogini Amy on Instagram.
Yogini Mallory.
Perfect.
Y'all have a great
Beautiful.
There it is. If you're in Memphis, you want to eat some ribs and go do some yoga, hit these ladies up. They'll get you
Yes.
going.
After the yoga.
Yeah, after. Oh, wait, but one more thing. Amy, was it you who Hannah was in that like seated twist bind? And you're like, what'd you eat for dinner last night? Taco Bell? And Hannah's like, actually, yes, it was Taco Bell.
You can tell. You can always tell, right? You can always tell. And I always
can, but-
say, look, there's no judgment. It takes one to know one.
Yeah. I love Taco. If I have to pick a fast food place, it's Taco Bell. Chicken quesadillas and a
Oh.
Crunch Wrap Supreme. That's me.
Oh God, I haven't been there in
Shameless.
years, but it sounds amazing. But like the day after the 4th of July or a holiday, then the morning class after those days, not good.
No.
Yeah.
The
Ear
smell.
and body
Bring the incense.
odor.
Bring
Yeah.
the incense. Yeah. Yeah. I feel you.
All right,
Y'all come
All
ladies.
right, I'm
see
not
us,
trying to.
okay?
This was a
We
beautiful
will.
conversation, and I'm tanking it into my usual shenanigans. So
You
I'm
wouldn't be
stopping.
you without a little bit of
It's true.
giggles. So,
All right, good.
all right,
Thank
guys.
you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys.
We'll talk to you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.